Hello there, this is Kuza, and welcome to my show. Okay, we're live. Hi, I'm Kuza, and with me today is Gaga. I sadly don't have a picture of him or a video feed, but I guess that's okay, we can still talk about stuff.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello and welcome. Nice to have you on the show. Today is the sound on now? Okay, good. Well, as announced, we will be talking a little bit about the U4 combat mechanics and generally stuff that relates to combat, like sieges, like what ideas are best and how you should build your armies. Shit like that that's not really very intuitive for most people, but it's fairly easy to understand. So what I wanted to start with is this latest scare that we have on the Paradox forums that the combat is completely broken in the latest patch. We have already just received confirmation from the devs that it's actually all working as designed and that the calculations that were made were actually flawed. Because, yeah, the combat was only with rebels, and rebels don't actually get any modifiers. So yeah, that's not really a big deal. Don't worry about it, just play the game normally. It's working. I mean, I understand the combat isn't the best at the moment. Early game, you have lots and lots of casualties. Later in the game, battles can drag on forever. What's your opinion on that, Gaga?
Well, the biggest problem is, in my opinion, that the system is a bit intransparent. You can't really understand what's going on unless you know how it is supposed to work. And yes, another problem that basically all Paradox games have is that we start at basically zero tech level with zero absolute modifiers influencing the battles. So early battles are really volatile and can range from decisive victories to decisive defeats, and it's basically coming down also the die roll in the early game.
Yeah,
Once
exactly.
once units catch up and get more stats and pips, the whole thing shifts a bit because every pip a unit has, offensive fire or defensive fire, counts towards the damage calculation like 1 point on the die. So if you have a unit with 10 attack and a unit with 10 defense, this is a zero sum, and the die is still important, but if you basically favor defensive units, you will have a much easier time when defending, because the difference in pips makes the die less important.
Yeah, and I understand that most people just have a problem with that because historically battles didn't just start being bloody in the beginning and getting less and less bloody as time went on. I mean, different types of weaponry and stuff actually made stuff even bloodier sometimes, but that's one of those discussions between, if game mechanics are more important or historical accuracy is more important. And I'm always a supporter of solid game mechanics because this is a game and not a simulation, and we don't really care as much about it being historically accurate as we want it to be a fun experience for us.
Yeah, but the thing here is, you could actually fix this problem rather easily and still keep historical flavor and good gameplay. Because I think what could be done to reduce the early bloodiness of the battles is just add some basic, let's say, tactics. Don't start at 0 tactics, or 1.0 tactics in this case, but for example, start at 2.0 tactics and then use smaller steps. It's basically what they did to the Victoria 2 combat system. That one was revamped and the basic tactics was reduced, and the tech gain from for tactics was vastly reduced. Instead of 100% tactics per tech level, you received like 25 or 20%.
Yeah, that was amazingly much. 100% for tech level. There practically wasn't a better tech in Victoria.
Yeah, so basically, if we would use some base values and add those in the early game battles would be less random and less bloody, and the late game battles could still be tweaked more easily to not get out of hand. one thing that is important is artillery becomes very, very powerful in the late game. And I think the AI does not really use the armies to full effectiveness at this point, even with all the tweaks that Wiz has done to the AI in AU4. So in single-player games, the battles will drag out probably a bit longer. To be honest, I haven't really played past 1600 in my last few games because I'm usually playing with my mod and testing stuff, and once all the thing is done, I'm restarting all over again. And at on 1600 onwards, you usually have confirmed most things and experienced the mechanics. Yeah.
Yeah, I must agree. I mean, I haven't really played too much after 1650 either. But until then, I mean, these really volatile battles are happening mostly until you practically have a large enough army to actually cover the whole front. Because that's at least my theory. Battles in the beginning are so... Even if the die rolls are pretty close to each other, it's only my impression, I don't know if it's true. It just seems like the bigger army always wins because it has those additional units at the flanks and they will always do more damage to you. So until both armies can actually fill out the whole combat with, the biggest army will always win.
Yeah, it's not really coming down to size all the time. Terrain is extremely important in the early game.
Yeah.
I mean, fighting it in a mountain province, it's basically suicide until you outnumber the enemy 2-1 or 1.5-1. And the problem with early game battles is that the flanks are relatively more important. If you have 10 units and you can have 2 on each flank that help flanking, 4 cavalry or something like that, those 4 units can basically provide like half the damage of the whole combat. But when the frontage gets wider and you have bigger armies, the flanks become less important, and so the whole numerical superiority quickly shifts. And then you come to a point where basically the front line is full and you have the unit stacking problem. I don't know if it's actually fixed that the overstacking now prevents artillery from going to the front line if you have infantry, but...
no, I've actually experienced it. In big armies, artillery still sometimes goes to the front line. I have no clue how exactly that works yet, and I've seen this problem especially when there are combined armies, I mean from different countries. They don't prioritize the infantry from other countries, they just put all your stuff in the front line, even if you have only cavalry or only artillery. They will put it in the front line in the center, everything else on the flanks and in the back.
You know, that could actually be a bug, because when they added a double damage modifier to artillery, for those who don't know, when artillery is pulled to the front line, and or basically if artillery takes damage, the damage is always doubled.
Yeah, it's doubled. Yeah.
This is done to prevent silly things like all artillery armies that we had, for example, in
EU3,
Victoria 2 or even EU3 in the end game.
Yeah, in the end game you just had some cavalry and all the artillery. It would destroy everything.
Yeah, so... yeah, it is probably bugged because the game is supposed to draw units from the side and the rear to the front line. But it could also be if you have really that many units that the whole second row is filled with artillery, then no infantry is present, that the game then uses the artillery in the front line and then moves the excess units to the second row. For example, the excess infantry that can't fit on the battlefield. And that's actually one of the bigger problems, in my opinion, from the whole combat system.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. I mean, I've seen it a lot of times. I always have in my armies more infantry than I have artillery, because if some infantry dies, I want the others to take its place, so the artillery doesn't have to go in the front row. But it still seems to happen a lot, and yeah, that's a problem they need to resolve.
Yeah, one thing you can do is, if you want to microbe it, basically place all the artillery in one single army, and if the artillery is pulled to the front line for whatever reason, you can still retreat the artillery army, and if you have a big battle, that's quite a good idea actually, because you can retreat the army, and if the battle drags on, you can bring it back in. So
and seeing as artillery is so expensive, it's a good idea to actually try and save it, even if you can't save the rest of your army.
Yeah, it's pretty costly. But then again, a bit of artillery is probably better to pay the high cost than, for example, have to wage another war because you didn't pack enough. Because I see a lot of guys who run really low artillery ratios in their army, and you should always. There's no excuse for not running 50% artillery, unless you really would bankrupt yourself in peace.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be right back. One moment. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, guys. My girlfriend just came to the room, wanted to talk to me about something. Okay, so we were discussing too little artillery in armies. So yeah, the point which Gaga was making is actually a really big one. I've seen a lot of threads all over the Paradox forums. They pop up every couple of weeks. What's the best army composition you could go with? Let's try and expand on that. I mean, there are quite a couple of informative posts, especially by Gaga, where you can actually see what the good army composition would be, depending on the stage of the game. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, I can try that. Actually, I don't think I have done it for AU4 at this point. I
You
think
did,
my
you did.
last...
I've seen it actually, but I think you actually were wrong in that specific post because you actually thought artillery can only cover half
Till-
of your
Yeah, I
combat
mistook
range.
the rear frontline modifier from damage instead of space.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, artillery firing from the second row gets a 50% damage reduction. And I mistook that for a 50% frontage reduction. So that post was basically,
Yeah,
said
but
that wrong.
the rest of the post was actually correct. I mean, artillery practically gives its pips to the unit in front of it. So it practically can shoot from the behind, from the second row. So
Yeah,
that actually increases your military capability, your combat power, without increasing the frontage, which is very nice and very powerful.
Yeah, the thing is, artillery does two things. First, it provides, I don't know if it's the full or the half, its defensive pips to the units in front of them, so they take less damage. The other thing is they can fire with half firepower from the rear. And that is quite important because it maximizes your combat power per frontage. And this can actually be very important as the game continues when artillery gets decent fire modifiers, because an army that is using 50% artillery will always have a big advantage of an army that's, let's say, only using infantry. And this advantage becomes more and more important when the armies get bigger. Because let's say we have an army of 30,000 units and another army of 30,000 units. One is only using infantry and some cavalry for the flanks, and the other is using 50% artillery, so 15 artillery units, let's say 12 infantry units and
3 cavalry
units.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically what that means is the artillery army will only occupy 15 squares on the front. And this, on the other hand, means the other army cannot deploy more troops on the front line than these 15 squares plus all units it can get on the flanks. So basically it can only use 19 units at a time.
Yeah.
And the other units will just sit idle and do nothing. So basically the front line is getting chewed up by the more powerful artillery army because they have more firepower per frontage. The enemy will break sooner. Let's say the die rolls are sort of equal. They do more damage. The front line breaks. The other units go in and usually get battered because they cannot project enough firepower compared to the artillery army.
Yeah, the additional firepower from the flanks is not actually equal to the firepower the artillery in the back row provides, so that's a very skewed kind of battle.
Yeah, and the larger armies get, the less impact the flanks have, and the more important the artillery in the second row becomes for supporting. Yeah, so that's also a reason why you can see much larger armies being defeated by smaller ones with artillery. And that is basically very important if you play competitive multiplayer games, because yeah, you won't survive when using mass infantry armies in multiplayer games. When you're past tech level 7, I think is the tech level where artillery gets its fire modifier. Yeah, so basically past level 13, artillery is so powerful that it's really...
Yeah, exactly. That's what I wanted to actually ask next, but you did it before. I wanted to ask, when does it actually start being beneficial to use artillery? Because the first artillery, the large cast iron cannons or whatever they're called, they aren't really too good. They only have 1 offensive pip for offensive fire and shock, and I think maybe 2 for offensive morale, I'm not quite sure. And that's everything. And that doesn't seem to be actually as good as you're making it out to be. I mean, I've actually tried it, and it's just a money sink. It doesn't really do much.
Well, the thing is, For one, artillery in AU4 has a much better fire modifier, Atlantic 7. I think in AU3 it had like 0.25 or 0.5 fire ratio, and here it has 1.0. So Atlantic 7 artillery is basically almost as even more effective than normal infantry, even when shooting from the second row. So it is effective, not really cost effective maybe because the shock is so dreadfully low, but it is still, even when you unlock it, you can still start equipping your main combat stacks with artillery because it will make a difference. It is costly, but then again, better spend some money on your units than spend money on the second war to take back the provinces you lost in the last one.
Yeah.
And basically, another thing that people usually forget is that artillery gives quite significant siege benefits. A single artillery unit gives a +1 siege roll modifier. That's equal usually of a basic general that can get 1 pip quite regularly.
Yeah.
And they cost military points now, so you will not use as many generals as in AO3. And this 1 siege point is pretty powerful.
Yeah, it is. You've actually done siege calculator. I will link to it, I think, in the description when I post this on YouTube.
Can I send you the link right now? So
we can actually link to it right now. Yeah. Here, people, for everyone who's in chat. Oh no, not this. Wait.
Yeah, that's the wrong one.
Yeah, this is it. So Gaga actually did the siege calculator. You can practically put in the values of your general, what siege modifiers he has, how much artillery provides, and stuff like that, and you will get the I think it's the middle ground, average of time it would take to get the fort. Am I right?
Yeah, basically you can enter all the important values like fort level, defensiveness and stuff, and then you can either run a single siege and see how that basically goes on as you click the button, or you can make 1,000 or 10,000 sieges, and the calculator can then export statistical results like minimum time, maximum time, and
average time, probably.
Average time, yeah.
Yeah.
You can basically see what's the best time. I can basically take a fort level 4, for example, with no artillery. What's the worst time I will usually have to take into account, and what's the average ratio. That's I think has become more important now that you get 1% attrition while sieging.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Artillery has become in that respect a lot more powerful. A lot.
Yeah. So if you don't really want to use artillery for battles, although it's definitely better, even if mostly not cost-wise, but you will definitely want it for sieges, because one of the complaints I personally have with the combat mechanics right now is how these shattered retreat works. I mean, I still know them from back in U3 when that was a mechanic there as well, where you could practically command your armies to retreat half the country so you could refresh and gather moral and not get wiped out, until they changed it. So right now, you can't really chase those armies. Am I right that those shattered armies are actually faster than your regular armies, even if you have a general with quite high maneuver? Because I've never been able to actually catch them without using forced march.
I think they get a 25% speed modifier. You can catch them with level 5 or 6 maneuver generals.
Yeah, if you have a level 6 maneuver, I think you have other things to... I mean, you don't have much to worry about if you can get that.
Yeah, the thing here is, the thing you described first, the AO3 thing, was actually a bug. You could basically issue a retreat order that went multiple province deep into territory, and so you could basically retreat through your whole country without the enemy giving a chance to attack you. And I'm actually not really sure why they brought that back.
Yeah, that's the question, because you said it. It was a bug back then. They fixed it in the latest patches, and now they decided to actually bring it back. I mean, in before patch 1.2, it was actually okay. You got these shattered retreaters towards a back province if you were fighting in your territory. If you were fighting deep in enemy territory, you would go back only one province, and I actually thought that was by design. And
That-
I really liked that mechanic because it means, okay, in a defensive war, you have that additional possibility to actually come back and not die horribly. But if you just venture out into the enemy territory and you get caught out with your pants down, you will die. Your army will get wiped. And you give your enemy the chance to actually siege back his provinces or just make a peace, a more favorable peace than before. And now it turns out that was actually a bug. And they brought this mechanic back where you can retreat wherever you want. Which, I don't know, I find a little bit weird.
Really, they did. I didn't even check that out. Is that was the recent patch 1.2 too?
Yeah, in the 1.2 you can actually retreat to your provinces from wherever you're fighting from.
Yeah, that's not really a bad thing because the whole thing that you only retreat one province in hostile territory was really, really putting the offensive side in a big disadvantage. Because it meant the defender usually got to retreat safely, but if you were defeated in hostile territory, your army was doomed. And because then the mechanic didn't work at all. And as I said, I don't really know why they put that back in. I think maybe it's from their multiplayer game experiences. I don't really know. But yeah, the thing is, the difference between AO3 and AO4 is you can't decide where to go. And that is actually leading to some really strange retreats. I mean, I've seen units retreating from Istanbul when playing Ottoman Empire down to Egypt where I'm fighting the Mamelukes. That's insane!
Yeah.
And you can't really influence that. And that's, I mean, they have optimized that algorithm a lot. It used to be really, really worse. But I really don't like this mechanic. I think it's okay because it makes the battles a bit less decisive in bigger wars. But I don't really know. I mean, you can still chase down the enemy, actually. It's not really that terrible. Because you basically have a predictable move pattern. Usually they will go back to the capital and to another province when they are in the capital already.
Yeah, I've seen it's something like you just go towards a safe region or something like that in your territory and you just choose the province with the biggest tax value or something like that.
Yeah.
If I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I was fighting with France against the rebels, I don't know, in Holland, and they were retreating to Bourgogne or something like that. Probably Paris was too close, I don't know. I don't know exactly how it works, but yeah, in principle, I actually don't dislike the mechanic either. I find it weird that they brought it back after they said, okay, it was not working as intended in U3. But the problem I have is actually that people seem to think that wars have to drag on until you're run out of manpower, or have lost all your armies, or are so much in debt that continuing the war is just suicide, practically. Nobody wants to actually forfeit a war and say, okay, I've lost these 2 big fucking battles, I've lost half my manpower, my armies are retreating across my country. Now what do? Do I want to really just reinforce those with taking 10 loans, or do I want to just say, okay, I had enough, you win this time, I'll give you 1 or 2 provinces, and we're done for. And we can just continue fighting another war later, when I'm actually strong enough again. I don't know, is this, in your opinion, actually just a problem of mentality from the players, or is this just something Paradox could fix by, I don't know, implementing some different game mechanic?
Well, I think it's mostly a mentality issue, because in multiplayer games you usually have a quite competitive environment, and I mean, we have played a few games together.
Yeah.
You know how it works. Usually nobody is, either you surrender right at front when you see, okay, I won't have any chance, or that war doesn't make sense for me, so basically before they have to occupy half my country and we have to fight for 5 years just to take Sardinia from me or something like that, I give it now and it's okay.
Yeah.
Or you have the other side where you fight to the last man and nail, and actually we had games where the other guy was defeated and didn't even surrender at this point. He had no manpower, no war exhaustion, and these wars become total wars, and that's...
Yeah, it's practically a war to destroy the enemy country, which didn't really happen historically, because so many people are actually complaining about historicity. Well, they're assholes as well, and they just play completely fucking stupid.
Yeah, that's the other problem. It depends on the other players. If you know you have reasonable players that will make reasonable deals, and it's not a game of let's kick this guy and then everybody jumps on him and we kick him out of the game and divide the country between us.
Yeah.
Without that mentality, you can actually make limited wars work, but it's very, very difficult because it often, you know how diplomacy ends in European Rosales. It's really a big issue, and I mean, you can scream at each other in TeamSpeak and stuff like that. It's highly emotional. It's highly emotional,
definitely,
especially when you get backstabbed by a guy or something like that. At least in our group, I know there's a lot of other groups where the people just play and they basically wipe each other off the board and then it's done. The groups where we played were a bit different. We usually try to keep the players on the board and give them a decent chance for a comeback.
Yeah, I mean, we played a lot of. I played with a lot of different groups, even in the German community, also in the more international, let's say, community. And I've played with a lot of different types of people. I mean, really, the groups that are most fun for me are with people that actually think, okay, having the human player in this country is actually more valuable than having this territory for myself and no player whatsoever there. Because having a player to actually control some more stuff is, in my opinion at least, a bigger advantage than having nobody there and practically fearing to be the next target of a big coalition or something. If everybody just teams up and kills someone, it's not absolutely the best idea in terms of actually game theory.
Yeah.
It's always good to try and keep them alive, maybe even if you attack them. Don't take too much, keep them alive. Maybe next time you will ally him and go together against someone else. Just, be reasonable. That's the big advice I can give on wars, actually.
Yeah, and be ready to make concessions even when you're winning.
Yeah.
Most players will take that in high regard, and it's not really worth your time and not in your interest to piss a player off by taking 5 more provinces. And then maybe he will scheme and plot to get those back. He will get other allies that are now worried. Basically, actually, that's a nice thing. The current coalition mechanics, in a way, represent multiplayer behavior quite nice. So if you take too many provinces or do too many things that piss other players off, you quickly end up in the position where most of Europe will ally against you and beat you down.
Yeah, that's actually a good thing you brought the coalitions up, because this is one of the biggest complaints I've seen on the forums, and the thing people are worried about at the moment the most.
Could we come to that in a second?
Yeah, we can.
Because I still have something to add for the
do that.
War and to drag out the wars. I think there's actually a possibility from the mechanical side to prevent players from waging wars for too long. It's actually in the game at this point. It's war exhaustion. But the thing is, it has no real teeth, so people can either ignore it or use the new feature to reduce it for a few administrative points.
I think it's diplomatic points.
It's dip points?
Yeah, it's dip points.
Even worse.
It's really useless. I mean, in total, I haven't seen actually a lot of use for diplomatic points beside if you want to colonize.
Indeed, they are diplomatic points. Yeah. So, but the thing is, if war exhaustion was more dangerous, even at lower levels, then people would probably make peace much quicker. I remember I did some experimenting in my EU3 mod with that, and I ended up in a situation where it was Venice, and I fought the Ottomans together with the Papal State or something like that, and I got beaten quite badly, lost a part of my navy, and they occupied Corfu and the other islands there, and I actually made peace while I still had the ability to beat back the Ottomans and win that war, because the war exhaustion I had like 5 or 6 points. I had added a modifier that reduced your trade efficiency. So my merchants started to get kicked out of all the COTs around the map. And the economical damage and the long-term damage was so great that I said, okay, take Corfu, but leave me alone. I want peace.
Yeah.
And if you can reach that point in EU4 by making war exhaustion more dangerous on long-term prospects, then you have a state where people are certainly more willing to end the war earlier and not make it a total war until their last manpower is bled out.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because if I remember correctly, they actually increased the war exhaustion you get from battles. Am I correct?
I don't have the current patch log in
I'm
mind.
not in the patch. I mean in U4 generally. I think war
Yeah, they are a
exhaustion.
bit higher. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can actually do that, because I was thinking about this as well, that's a good point. If you would get, you now already get a lot more war exhaustion from big battles. So let's say you have one big battle, you lose it pretty badly, you gain like 3 war exhaustion from one fucking battle. That should be, an incentive for you to actually say, okay, I've lost one battle, that's enough. I don't want to actually risk getting higher up in war exhaustion for a year or more, and then practically lose half my economy and actually have more damage than continuing to fight and maybe even win the war.
Yeah, or you get rebels, which are quite dangerous in EU4. At least some of them.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're a little bit later in the game and you have a lot of money, especially as a country like France, which is rich and compact, rebels don't really do much, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And even in bigger countries and more widespread countries like the Ottoman Empire, or so, rebels, they are not easy to deal with, but there are not enough provinces with a high base tax that give a lot of rebels, so you actually have to be too worried about it. That's at least my opinion. I don't know if it's really that way, or maybe I just didn't let wars get out of hand that completely that my country was overrun.
Well, the thing is, rebels can now spawn from rebel-occupied provinces, so if you allow rebels to get a foothold on your country, you can really end up in situations that are really nasty. I had a game as France where I had like 80,000 rebels in 1550 or something like that, just in the Britannia, because I allowed them to take 3 provinces there while fighting Austria. But here's the other thing: unless they are nationalists, patriots, I think. No, nationalists are the
nationalists
guys
are the
dangerous.
ones that create independent countries.
Yeah,
I
genau.
think, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Apart from nationalists, the rebels are just not dangerous because you can always basically just negotiate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, oh god, there are like 200,000 peasants roaming around France. Well, just give in to their demands, then you get a tax penalty on some provinces they took, and they will all disappear. The effects for most rebels are really, really not worth risking or losing manpower to them, actually. I had a lot of games where I just flat out said, I accept your demands, and I didn't even fight them, because it makes no sense. You don't want to risk 20,000, 50,000 manpower in an early game war against rebels. Just give them 50 prestige and minus 20% tax in a province or two, and that's fine. And unless it's the rebel type that becomes actually independent when you negotiate, all the rebels are toothless.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's also what I wanted to say. I mean, just make the war exhaustion a little bit more problematic, even on lower levels, either by making rebels a little bit more powerful, although making rebels generally more powerful would also increase the difficulty for other areas like peasant wars, or I don't know, the War of the Roses for the English, and such other events that you can't really, that aren't created by wars. That's what I mean.
Yeah. Have you actually played England a few times?
Yeah, I've played England a few times.
Okay, because I'm curious, because I think at this stage the Rose Wars are really dangerous. I mean, I usually fight the 100-Year Wars right when I start playing, and just give the French guys Labon and Gascogne right away, because it's not really worth fighting on as England. You don't have the manpower, you start at 4 or 5 war exhaustion, and you get a War of the Roses. It's really hard to win that war against the human player. You can do it against the AI, but it's really...
Against the human player, I would say it's impossible. If it's a one-on-one, it's impossible. I can't really see a way for England to do anything. I think your army is just as big as the vassal armies of France and Provence. And France has 30,000 troops more, so I don't really see a way to actually win this against the human player. Only if you're extremely lucky and you really just have a battle with, or you have more small battles. I don't know, I can't really... I mean, against the AI, yes, I've done it. It's not too hard, it's just tedious, and you need to just watch where you're going, and you need to be lucky with the die rolls. But against the human player, only if you have godlike luck on the die rolls, maybe you can win.
Yeah, and that's basically one of the situations we had before. It's a war where you don't want to fight to the end because you know it's hard to win, and even if you win it, the benefits are. I mean, the risk is much higher than the benefits you get from the 100 Years' Wars, England.
And yeah, but that's the thing. I don't think just buffing the rebels as it is would improve much, because let's be honest, peasant wars are hard enough as it is. Such events like the War of the Roses, I think there are some others, I'm not sure, are hard enough. There's the religion wars, which are also not easy, especially for bigger countries, if you want to switch religion. Maybe just... Yeah, Russia as well.
Russia has the Time of Trouble event chain as a flavor event. That is really nasty.
That was incredibly fucking bad in EU3 as well. I mean, each time it popped up in a multiplayer game, I had to edit it out because it was just... You practically took out the whole country for 50 years or more to actually be able to come back into the game. But yeah, so I think rebels are actually okay because they do a lot of damage actually. As you said, you might just want to negotiate with them instead of fighting because you would just lose a lot of manpower for nothing.
Yeah, but the thing is, the rebel troops are okay as they are. They are really powerful. There's no question about that. But the thing is, the negotiation with rebels is not dangerous or not. There are not enough drawbacks for negotiating with the rebels. Basically, you can negotiate with them all the time unless they are religious or nationalist.
Yeah.
And if they change that, so for example, patriots have a chance to turn over provinces, or will always at least give one province to the enemy and stuff like that, you would make them more powerful indirectly. The troops would still be dangerous, as they are now.
Yeah. But you would be incentivized to actually fight them instead of giving in to their demands.
Exactly. Right off the bat. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I was thinking is just like you did in your mod, just, I don't know, build in a negative modifier to your trade power or something like that, or just increase the... I think the taxes are decreased already through the rebel risk, through the revolt risk that you're getting from the war exhaustion, so that's not necessarily a problem. I would say reduce the number of mercenaries you can get, because I think that's one of the big problems right now. People are not really willing to stop a war because they know, well, I can just continue and I'll get 15 or so mercenary stacks each month, or let's say 10, because you probably want to only get the infantry ones instead of the artillery or cavalry. And you'll be fine for the most part until you go bankrupt or until the enemy has enough of your ever reoccurring army stacks. And that's a problem while fighting the AI as well, in my opinion. The AI will happily bankrupt itself to actually rebuild armies again and again and again, even if you have half their country occupied already.
Yeah, I think they added some build time increase, and they have carried that over.
Yeah, but it's not too bad. I mean, you can build normally in 9 days or something like that, mercenary stack.
Yeah, mercenary.
Even if they double it or triple it even, it's still a month. You can build in half your country until the enemy can get there, and you still have new armies. And a month or so is not enough to actually get a sufficient amount of provinces through sieges to make it worthwhile. To say, yeah, okay, beat that army, I can get like 4 or 5 provinces, I'm in a better position now. If I beat the next army, I can get 5 more provinces, and then I make peace. It doesn't really work that way. Sieges are a little bit too slow in comparison to how fast you can actually get new armies built.
Yeah, I think the problem is indeed that the actual combat is not really influenced by war exhaustion. And I mean, yes, you get some like 2% decrease of moral per war exhaustion, but even if you would be at 20 points at maximum, that would be like 40%. That's big, but with modifiers you can stack on that, it's not actually as devastating as it should be.
Yeah.
So I think adding more economic impacts of war exhaustion, trade is, I think, an area where you could do that quite well, because You wouldn't lose the merchants at this point, but you would lose control over the trade nodes of your empire. And that could actually be quite important and make trading nations a lot more inclined to agree to peace offers in the war exhaustion
I wouldn't even say only trade nations, because as of now I don't really see countries that wouldn't profit heavily from trade, even especially a little bit later in the game when there's not 100 miners in the Holy Roman Empire, but there's only like 10 human countries left and a couple of miners and vessels and stuff. I mean, everybody will heavily be profiting from trade, so decreasing that amount would actually be quite important, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I could quickly check what I changed in my mod, and I think I added a few things to the war exhaustion list. For example, yeah, here we have it. I added -1% trade efficiency per war exhaustion point, so that's not much at this point, but I have to revamp that anyway. I added 1% production efficiency penalty. I added an increased cost for all units, even mercenaries. So you can get new ones at high war exhaustion, but they are more costly. 1% extra per point. I should increase that too. So, yeah. Legitimacy is not really important in the base game, I guess, so that isn't negligible. Reinforcement speed, that could be another good way to...
Yeah, reinforcement speed would be interesting. I mean, I think just make war exhaustion counter the tradition modifiers. I think that would be actually enough, maybe per total, to actually decrease the combat effectiveness of your armies.
Yeah, but in the end, there's still a problem in EU4 that you can just reduce it all the time.
That's true.
And that's actually one of my bigger gripes with EU4, that all these actions have no cooldown whatsoever. You can go from -3 step to +3 step within 1 day. Yeah. And that is really... I mean, yes, you're spending administration points on that, but it feels so...
Yeah, but you're using administration points for a lot of other stuff, like coring provinces, and that's not instantly either. They've added so many mechanics that actually require time. I don't know why they did this inconsistency of actually having stability increase instantly, having war exhaustion be decreased instantly, inflation is decreased instantly if you use points, and so on. They have a couple of things that actually go instantly. And I don't really understand why this difference, why some mechanics require time and why some others don't.
I think only the devs can answer that question. I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, but maybe we should bring them
once. To give them credit for is that they actually fixed war taxes now, that it costs 50 military points.
War taxes are definitely now a good thing, a very good thing. They don't cost too much. They make wars not be completely destructive to your economy and to your country. It's quite nice. I really like that change.
Yeah, it's a really good change, actually. Yeah. Overall, the whole monarch point system is still...
They need to tweak it.
Improved. I mean, the imbalance of points is really sad. I mean, when I have very few games where I actually picked one of the administration NIs early on, because you usually go diplomatic first because these points are unimportant for your early wars. You hurt your military by picking an early military NI, which is just
very counterintuitive if you think about it.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive. That's the word for that. It's just strange.
Yeah, because that's what I did in my first couple of games with single player. I just said, okay, I'll do the usual thing I did in EU3. Let's take a military idea, something that increases my moral, maybe. I don't know what it was until they changed. I think it was something like aristocracy or offensive or something like that would increase your moral a little bit. And I always took that first, and after a couple of ideas I was thinking, okay, why am I losing so hard? And then I was looking, I'm like 3 points behind in technology, or like 2 points, but that was enough to actually get destroyed by enemies. I mean, especially if you skip one of those important tech levels where you get new unit types or stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. The early tech levels are much more powerful than any NI you can bring to the field.
Yeah.
Much more powerful. And many NI groups even are not that great for the early game. So, I don't know. I think they moved the quantity NIs didn't they? They moved Levin
Yeah.
Moss to the first slot.
Yeah, because
Which is
that was that.
finally.
Yes, that's what I said. Finally, because are you kidding me? The first thing in quality was what? More or less minus 10% infantry cost or something like that. What it was? I'm not quite sure what it was, but it was something ridiculously underpowered and bad. I mean,
The thing is,
you take quantity because you want more stuff. You don't want your stuff to be cheaper in the beginning. It was really, really bad.
That would be okay, but the fact was, offensive gives you 25%
Exactly.
manpower on the second slot. So if you wanted more man, you went offensive and not quantity.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was, I
you don't
think,
get-
actually it was the last thing you got. The 50% increase
Yes.
was actually the total bonus, which was so weird.
The
So weird.
final slot and the bonus from the whole NI group was like 33% land force limits.
Oh
Actually,
yeah, that's
I wonder,
actually remaining there. That's still the ending.
I wonder if they actually. Well, I wonder why they didn't add a free NI for unlocking the groups, because that would balance those first NI choices much better.
Just give you a free NI in the beginning. That actually would be something.
Yeah, or give you the finisher as an opener instead.
Yeah, that would also work, because right now practically you get 2 NIs for the cost of 1 right at the end.
Yeah.
And like this, you would practically get an NI just for unlocking the administrative tech, practically. And that would actually, yeah, that's a nice idea. That's really good. But they would have to rebalance all of the idea trees, but still,
Yeah,
I think that
mean,
would be a nice change.
If you want to check out some rebalanced NI trees, you can, shameless self-promotion, look at the mod I made. Because I basically sat there and tried to make every NI group sort of useful for the early game, for the mid and the late game. And I tried to move something to the first slot that is useful whatever you pick. Even administrative is useful as first NI, if you really are in a situation where it matters.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem with the idea trees I have right now is that you can practically just unlock everything. If you really put your mind to it and have the spare points, you can just fill it up in like 3-4 years or something like that if you really don't focus on anything else. Which is, in my opinion, a little bit curious, because in U3 you had that limiting factor of tech. You needed to actually unlock a certain tech to get to the higher level NIs. And I really liked that. NIs like foraging were something like level 32 land tech or something like that. You would get them very, very late. NIs like Smithian economics, you could get them after, I don't know, level 20 or something like that. You couldn't just get them in the beginning and increase and practically have some overpowered NI just for nothing, practically. I mean, it's not for nothing. You still use the points for them, but I don't know.
Yeah, the thing is here, I mean, you can't even choose which NIs you want, because, I mean, look at Innovative, for example. This NI group has some really cool NIs for early game and some really bad ones. I mean, this group is, I think, not the worst offender. I think Administrative for the rework was pretty bad. I mean, it's still
Administrative was the one with the mercenaries?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's bad. That's really not good.
I mean, it's not actually terrible, because mercenaries are basically a must-have in the early game, but you don't really want to spend 800 administration points on that at this stage. And the economics was just better because it gave you more money, and that also allowed you to get more mercenaries. So, yeah, I mean, I understand that they have removed the ability to pick whatever you want from this NI groups. I think actually when looking in the documents, you can see they might have had that in at some point and removed it later on. I don't know.
So you could practically get a tree and then pick the NIs you wanted from it?
I don't know. I think, I mean, I checked the files and just the structure, how the values are sorted there, and some comments, and the whole thing of the final NI and something like that. It sort of looks like they, at a really early stage, were not sure how they wanted to handle the whole system. I guess they had that was part of the development process, and then they finally came up with this streamlined approach, basically unlock everything one after another. And it's not really bad. I mean,
yeah, no, I actually like the idea of it, but it's a little bit it needs tweaking.
my biggest gripe is that they sacrificed or merged sliders with NIs, and that's
Yeah.
actually the point where I really don't like EU4. It's one of the biggest complaints I have about the game. Sliders were a great tool for long-term impact on your nation, in my opinion. For events, for
Yeah.
example. Most of the events you get now are just boring, and you just pick what is best for your current situation, because no event has a real long-term impact. I mean, in EU3 you could get a slider move towards decentralized that would affect your country until the end of the game.
Yeah.
You could counter that by moving the slider yourself, but in general, events were so more interesting and powerful, and so more choice was involved because you had long-term impact from sliders. Now that sliders are basically converted into NI groups, you don't have that. And another point is, you can clearly see they just assigned all the old EU3 NIs to the NI groups, and all the bottom groups of each tree, are those who have new ideas most of the time. I mean, quantity basically has almost no idea out of AO3. Levian Moss is in there, but apart from
And
that...
national conscripts, I think.
Are there? No, this is an offensive.
Ah, offensive. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, if you check the files, you can see the top parts in the files, the top NIs in the files, get all the EO3 NIs assigned to them, and when they came to the bottom NI groups, they ran out of NIs from AO3 because they had more slots to fill. So they made up new NIs, and basically what you could see was all the bottom NI groups sucked when AO4 was released. They are still not great, and they are also the groups that have most of the newer new NIs in them. I mean, stuff like expansion, they don't have any of the old NIs from AO3 in there.
Yeah, I can't really remember what the names were in AO3, so I didn't really follow what they actually took from AO3 one-on-one.
Yeah, but in general, it's interesting to see, because that means first come, first served, and because of that, quantity is so bad. Just because they assigned all the other NIs already to other groups. And for example, I don't really understand why military drill should be defensive, or why...
I mean, they really made kind of a weird mix-up there. I'm not really completely... I don't agree with most of the NIs. I mean, just look at the innovative NI tree and the plutocracy NI tree. I mean, the plutocracy actually gives you more tech cost reduction than innovative gives you, which is for me again very counterintuitive.
And innovative, on the other hand, doesn't even affect the religious wars anymore, and you don't give any... For example, I wonder why they didn't add any religious unity to that tree, because innovative would make perfect sense to give like 10 or 20% unity, so you could actually survive provinces of a different faith in your country. So basically, I think they just carried over the old NIs, filled out the slots, and they are not really adjusted, aside from some exceptions like resilient state that now gives inflation cost after the patch. It was...
Yeah. I mean, in the last patch, they changed a couple of things, and they changed it for the better, in my opinion. Especially, as you said, the quantity, which was the biggest problem I had with the whole military idea stuff. Because I really like quantity in general. In U3, I would always take the quantity ideas, not the quantity slider, because the quantity slider was, I didn't really agree with it in U3. But when it came to the ideas, the manpower ideas and stuff, I would always take that. But to be honest, right now, I think just take offensive if you want those. You get 1 point in each general skill, and besides, I think, siege and maneuver, maybe? I'm not sure what you wouldn't get.
You get 1 leader shock, 25% manpower, so that's a quantity effect.
Yeah,
in there.
Exactly.
You get 1 fire, you get more prestige from land battles, you get 1 maneuver, you get 25% land force limit modifier.
Exactly.
That's almost as high as the quantity bonus.
Yeah, which is the last in the quantity tree.
You get 10% discipline, which is basically quality.
Yeah, so offensive is like a mix-up of both, because you get better leaders and you get more troops.
Yeah. So, I mean, the leader improvements are, in my opinion, not really that powerful. I don't know, but overall, offensive is just basically a mashup between quality and quantity, and just better suited for the early game because the effects are well balanced, well rounded, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I would take quality in the early game over
Yeah,
offensive.
no. I mean, if early game, I would either take offensive, or if you're not really keen on fighting a lot of wars, just take defensive. Because with defensive, you always have a high army tradition, which also translates in better generals. I guess the bonus you get from the first NI in defensive actually is better than all of those 1+ points in the offensive group, to be honest.
You mean the siege point?
No, not the
you-
siege point, the tradition. They increased the tradition.
Yeah, another thing that I don't really understand that should be, for example, in my opinion, more like quality and I.
Yeah, definitely.
Basically,
it should be
defense
quality.
is just a strange mashup of stuff that doesn't really fit completely in there. But I mean, even when I tried to rework that in iGroup for my mod, I had a hard time to find actually something useful that fits a defensive theme and can be conveyed by the game mechanics. It's not that easy. I think I added something like higher enemy core cost for your provinces, like the aristocracy and some revolt risk reduction, stuff like that. But I mean, the problem is, how do you fight defensively in AO4?
I don't know, just maybe decrease the cost of forts and decrease the point cost for forts as well.
Yeah, you can do it as a modifier. You can't, basically, that's another thing. You can't really...
Oh, you can't influence that? Oh, that's... okay.
It's a fixed 10 points per building.
Oh, okay, that's...
Yeah, they didn't add that, sadly. Maybe we get it with...
Yeah, maybe we can convince them to actually make that moddable, because that would be a useful thing to actually have.
And would also make the buildings much more easy to balance, because at this point spending 10 points on some buildings is just not really great, even if the gold cost isn't that high.
Yeah, I mean, some of those, what do you call them, the trade buildings are not really great. And the first two naval buildings are terrible. They are completely fucking useless. They give you nothing of value. And what do they give you? They give you a little bit of trade power increase in that province, and faster ship build time and faster repair time, or some stupid shit like that.
Repair can actually be quite powerful if you wage a war, so I wouldn't dismiss that. It's more a strategic thing.
But you know, you can make that repair, just make a unique building, a big wharf or something. I don't know what you would call it. I think you had that as a province decision in EU3. Just build that, and you only need like 2 of them, because your navy always retreats where you tell them to.
Yeah, I mean, look at the government buildings. Tier 3 is basically useless outside of your capital because spies are...
Yeah, definitely, but that was a problem since EU3.
Yeah, but in EU3 didn't you have local spy defense actually for local province actions? Because now in EU4 all spies use always the capital modifier. So wherever you inside rebels or something like that.
Okay, yeah, but the thing you actually wanted to do, most things were actually in the capital, like infiltrate administration, sow discontent, all those things, those important stuff. I mean, okay.
The siege bribing was quite good.
Yeah, bribing for sieges, yeah, that wasn't bad, that's true enough. Especially here, it could actually be good because sieges just take longer, because the fort levels start at 2 and not at 1.
Yeah, so, and I mean, have you ever built tier 5 or 6 buildings from government? No,
never. I think I've actually played U3 multiplayer once, where we actually used the house rule, because the tier 5 and 6 build, especially for military, that everybody would just dismiss everything else, and we came to have something like 4 million manpower, or some stupid number like that. That was before the manpower rebalance.
Yeah, or the trade buildings. I mean,
you had like what?
1% trade efficiency?
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
I think
and so we actually used a house rule to actually limit the amount of level 5 and 6 buildings you could build to 10 per country. And yeah, that worked pretty well actually. And I haven't actually played as much in U4 to actually be able to build, to actually make a decision on whether I want to build them or not. But I cannot actually see me building government buildings, definitely not. Always the military, probably, or production, or trade. I don't really think naval, maybe if you're a land, something like maybe the Ottomans or France, and you want to be
Netherlands.
competitive on, or the Netherlands, and you want to be competitive on the sea and in the colonies, yes, then you would want to build the level 6 naval stuff. But some of these things are just really niche, and some are just no-brainers, and I mean, that was pretty much a problem in EU3 as well, where the centralization slider was such a no-brainer. You would if you didn't know what else to take, you would just go centralize.
Yeah. I mean, they also did these limits later on where you could not surpass a certain negative value on the left, or you would get.
Yeah, but you could still go 1 over, or maybe even 2 over.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's how overpowered in one side it was. Actually, just check the building. They now cost 5 points per building. So that's actually patched. Yeah.
What? When did they patch it? Because I played yesterday. I played multiplayer, and they were still 10.
I mean, I have started up the correct version, I hope. Yeah. So they have 5 points per building.
Okay, did they patch it just now? Are you kidding? Wait, I'm just gonna start EU4 as well, just to check it out as well.
Oh no, wait. Now it's 10? Ah, that looks like a display bug. I checked buildings in hostile territory.
Ah, okay.
Building cost was like 5 points.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe it's an AI bonus? Let me just quickly switch here.
Might be, I can't say.
It's just displaying for some reason a 5-point cost in for region territory.
Okay.
For whatever reason. So bad news, not changed.
Okay. Yeah. So let's actually talk a little bit about the rest. What I didn't understand is why did they think it would be a good idea to make a different NI tree for republics? I mean, why do you have aristocracy for monarchies and everything, and you have plutocracy for republics? I mean, I get why they did it from an idea standpoint, from a historical standpoint maybe. But even republics could have aristocracy, and even monarchies could have a strong plutocracy. So I don't really see that as a big problem. And I mean, plutocracy, in my opinion, is actually much more powerful than aristocracy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the tech cost reduction alone is ridiculous. But the thing is, they just carried over the 2 sliders from AO3. That's the reason we have these 2 NI groups. And I think we didn't even have we don't have anything for theocracies, for example.
Yeah, we don't. Theocracies so count, I think, as normal monarchies, as far as I can tell.
So basically, Paradox is a bit lazy when they make their new games. They carry over all the old stuff. If you check some files, for example, in AO3 or Victoria, basically, if you check the file structure of every Paradox game, you will always find some old files from old games. I think Victoria had some images and sprites from EO2 or EO1 even, and stuff like that. So I think they just carry over all their things when they make a new game, and then they basically assign these stuff to the new game.
Well, it's not a new thing that Paradox games take like 1 or 2 expansions to actually get really, really good. I mean, it's improved a lot in the last few iterations of their games. I mean, CK2 was quite well playable and at the release. Even Victoria 2, with all its problems, it wasn't too bad on release.
Well, you could play it. I mean, do you remember AO2? You crashed after 5 minutes. You couldn't even play it, right?
Yeah. Even EU3 at release was a complete fucking disaster.
And just, I mean, go back to that now, and I have somewhere the collector's edition, and I installed it a while ago. And I thought, you played that? I mean, I can remember I was sick a week after release and were in bed and had dragged the PC so I could play from my bed. And I thought, you played this game?
Yeah.
Good lord.
Yeah, I can even remember I've actually played in EU3 the collector's edition. I bought it when it just came out. I was in Vienna with my father, I don't know why. And we saw it in a shop and I said, oh yeah, I won't find that in Romania, I have to buy it. I bought it, and of course I didn't have a powerful enough PC back then. I couldn't play it. I didn't have the pixel shader or whatever you needed back then. So I had to wait until I actually went to university to be able to play it, because then my father was proud, he bought me a laptop and it finally could play the game. And I actually played it. My first game was with Wallachia or something like that. And I actually I couldn't really do much. I mean, I've played U2 before, I knew how the game was supposed to work, but yeah, you start as a vassal of the Ottomans or stuff like that. In any case, I managed to actually conquer all of Russia, I think, half of Eastern Europe without any fucking problem. I mean, the AI was so bad, so terribly, terribly bad. It wasn't even funny.
Think of all the all-cap armies you were using, basically
Yeah.
smashing through enemies.
Only cavalry. I went mercantilism, but tried to monopolize all the trading centers because free trade was just bad.
And that was still the point where you had to send 2 merchants because
Yeah,
one
exactly.
only opened a slot.
And the other had to occupy the space. Yeah, I can remember. So in practice, the games just got lots and lots better. But still, Victoria 2 only just recently, with the last expansion, got really, really good. I haven't really played it a lot, but I'm really looking forward to actually trying it out for an extended period of time.
The thing is, Wiki 2 had a basic economic rework with the latest add-on, and that changes quite a lot. I mean, Nazalos is probably, you know him from the Pop of Darkness mod and the stuff like that. He basically rewrote for his mod all the economic stuff, and I think some of that might have been carried over for Wiki. I don't actually know what has been changed, but the actual changes in the add-on are subtle for many players because you can't really see the economics in Wiki 2, but they are really, really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, Paradox games are like wine; they ripe over time.
Exactly. That's a really good analogy.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not like you shouldn't buy them on release. I mean, at this point, the games are really. I mean, Crusader Kings was great on release.
Yeah.
That's
Crusader Kings was great on release. Even EU4 was great on release. I really had a lot of fun with it since it appeared. I mean, even until the biggest problems were fixed in the beginning. I mean, you had those randomly changing trade flow directions when some territories changed hands, and from one day to the other you had like 20 gold less per month, and you didn't know why.
Reassigned when you
exactly, for no reason practically. They would change the direction of the trade and some other stuff. I mean, it wasn't too big and I really had a lot of fun, but still, they improve it. I mean, and I'm really happy to see they actually improve it through patches, because that was a big thing in Europa Universalis 3. You actually had to wait like 2 expansions for it to be well playable in multiplayer especially.
Yeah, they have improved quite a lot on that side. I mean, the games are stable now. They are mostly free of bigger bugs, and they are a lot more enjoyable compared to older stuff and older versions. And I mean, the thing is, you can't really expect them, and that's the thing that is a bit annoying for me when I read on the forums. You can't really expect them to deliver a perfect working and well-balanced game on release, because the devs really don't have the time to check out all the features and balance everything out. So
it needs time. So if you need experience from all the players. Yeah, because there's always going to be the one player who finds that one bug in that one certain condition which needs to be patched because it could be exploited.
Yeah, not even that. I mean, bugs are hard to find at some point, and sometimes hardware related and stuff like that. But even features have to be tested. I mean, you see, they're now tweaking the whole vassalizing thing because now people abuse the vassals by gifting provinces, and then
that's a big problem again that I have.
Yeah, but that stuff you don't really see while developing a game, so you can't scream, oh, Paradox didn't get it right when they released it. They're terrible. They don't have the time and resources to fix or find out stuff like that. They can't play 20 hours of multiplayer games each week and then still code basically the whole game while they do that. I think that's a bit utopic to think that they find all the issues and exploits.
No, I mean, you could expect it from simpler games, but definitely not from something that has so much complexity like this, because there are so many areas which need to be tested separately to actually get everything right.
Yeah, I mean, I have like 300 hours on the EU4 beta, so you can do a lot and fix a lot of stuff when that thing. I can't go into detail because of
of course.
I mean, these games are being tested a lot before release, and I mean you still see a lot of things that slip through or do not come up when you do that. So yeah, every time somebody screams that Paradox Q&A is terrible and the game is broken, I just cringe.
Yeah, exactly. They don't know broken games. I mean, very rarely do I see veterans that actually say that. Once in a while, you see some people that say they're on the forums in 2001 or 2 or 3 or something like that, and they say stupid stuff like that. And I say, okay, maybe they have a short memory or whatever, but they are the minority. Most of the people are guys that came in with Crusader Kings or something like that, and they are the ones who say I always want to tell them, dude, you don't know what broken means in Paradox terms. You don't know what broken means. I mean,
you have never experienced One Piece.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
I mean, even Hearts of Iron 3 on release was still a disaster.
Yeah, that was actually pretty bad.
Yeah, that was actually, I would even say, after the couple of expansions they got out for EU3, I actually thought, well, maybe this release won't be so bad. But then it was really bad, so yeah.
Yeah, but I think that was the turning point. Everything after that...
Everything after that was been much better, yeah.
And I think that was a point where they really had to do that, because Howie 3 on release was dreadful. I mean, for me, the game is, even at this point, not really finished. The supply system is still a train wreck and stuff like that, so that game would need at least 2 or 3 more expansions to become really good, and...
Yeah, actually, who knows? Maybe we get an Hearts of Iron 4. Who knows?
Yeah, that would also be a good choice. But at this point, I think Arsenal of Democracy is a really... better than Howie 3. Although I really like the customization stuff, and also, oddly enough, the automatization you can do. Because... Yeah,
definitely. Because you have so many provinces.
Yeah, but it's quite an armchair general feeling that you can automate some... And it takes rather good care at this point of it. And I mean, I played a few games in multiplayer. One Soviet Union game where I played Germany and Italy on Black Ice or Ice mod. I think it was the Ice mod. And oh god, that was a battle that was epic, but that just became really more like work in the end when you had to sweat.
Yeah, definitely. Hearts of Iron games later in the game were really just about micro this and micro that, and it's a little bit annoying. I mean, I don't really trust the AI too much, I must say. I mean, I've seen Germany fail too many times, more times than I can count, against the Soviet Union, and not even historically, like, okay, they got to Moscow and they were driven back in the winter or stuff like that. I even saw Germany get overrun by the Soviet Union, like, 4 or 5 weeks into the war and stuff like that. So, I'm a little bit reluctant sometimes to actually give stuff over to the AI, but I must say, that's one of the things I like to do when I play single player. Just, you know, build up my armies, make army groups and stuff, and then give them, you know, orders. Take Paris, or take Normandy, or stuff like that. And then watch the AI struggle to actually do it is such a good feeling. You're right, you really feel like a general watching over a map, and...
It's actually the only way I play Howie 3 at this point. By the way, we have an interesting remark in the chat. Somebody said that on the other side of the publishing thing, there were Gettysburg and Sword of the Stars 2. And
yeah, those were terrible.
These releases were dreadful. I mean, I haven't actually played Gettysburg, but I saw a few videos from Total Biscuit and stuff like that. Yeah. They were really looking like a broken game. Yeah. And Sword of the Stars, I mean, I bought it on release and I have played it like 2 hours at this point, even with all the patches and releases. It's sad, but to keep in mind, this is publishing and not game development. The games Paradox develops itself now are released in a rather good state. I guess Paradox did not really have the Q&A control or observation on these games. I mean, on the other hand, you have things like Magna Mundi that was plugged.
Yeah.
Probably for the better when you see what was released.
Yeah, definitely.
This new game they released now with the sets basically they made, it was in a terrible state.
Yeah, it was definitely
it was in a terrible state. So.
But yeah, they actually learned from Gettysburg. I actually think it was a good thing that game came out completely and utterly broken, because I think it woke them up pretty much. And they now know, okay, we can't let this happen ever again or we lose all our credibility. Because this is how games industry is, right? I mean, you build up this loyal fan base and stuff, and then with 1 or 2 games that come out completely destroyed, you lose everything.
Yeah, and once you have a bad reputation,
Yeah.
cough,
Yeah.
then it's not really great and not easy to fix. I mean, I think Paradox really has the advantage of not being a big company that has to appeal to the mainstream with its games. I think we can see some mainstream influence on AO4, but overall they keep a nice balance between bringing back the fans to a better version of the game and getting new guys to play the game. Because, I mean, just look at the AO4 interface. It's so much better.
It's a lot better. It's a lot
transparent,
better.
it's colorful. It's so much more understandable.
Yeah, and you have tooltips for everything, which is nice as well. I mean, I haven't used them, I must confess. I didn't use them because I thought, I'm a EU3 veteran, I'm gonna understand everything anyway. I didn't. So, yeah, use the tooltips if you're new to the game. They actually tell you a lot. And most of the things you will find on the forums and on the wiki actually come from the fucking tooltips. From people who have actually had the diligence to read them.
Yeah, we should add, at this stage, AO4 actually has correct and good tooltips, because lots of stuff in AO3 was quite cryptic.
Yeah.
And I mean, we have now a luxury of the tech tree where we can see each and every tech level that influence a certain variable.
Yeah.
When will infantry get better fire? I mean, in AO3 you had to read through the files to get through that. It basically was, when you play multiplayer, you had to open the file.
To actually prepare for your country to see, what missions will I maybe get and what are the conditions I have to meet to actually get this in this event, which is quite nice for my country. I mean, you still have a little bit of that, but not as much as it was in EU3.
Yeah, for example, that you can now see all the tech levels for military stuff.
Yeah.
Is just so
it's
much
ridiculously good, yeah.
Yeah, that's really big leap forward. I think that's the biggest advance EU3 made, apart from the trade system, which is not perfect, but so much better than AO3. The trade system is basically one of the biggest selling points, and I hope they improve on it in future DLCs and or add-ons.
Yeah, me too.
But as of now, it's finally, I mean, you have strategic impact for naval bases, for trading and stuff like that. That wasn't in AO3. It's really great.
Yeah, that's true enough. Yeah, I don't think we have a lot of time left. I think I had planned to go until 8 o'clock. I think 1.5 hours is a good start. And if people like it, I guess we can make more of them. And yeah, trade is definitely a topic we can discuss sometimes else if you want to be a guest again, if you had fun discussing this stuff.
Oh, certainly.
And yeah, I think we have a lot of other points to touch upon. But I think in total we actually talked about pretty much everything I wanted to go through. I mean, we talked about the military ideas and which ones are actually quite good, and I think we've come to the conclusion offensive military ideas are a good combination for the early game.
Yeah.
And in terms of army composition, as soon as you hit a level 7, get artillery. As soon as you get level 12, always have 50% artillery in your armies. What
Always
other
have some
things?
cap for the flanks, 2 or 4
Yeah.
units.
A bit of cavalry on the flanks if you have a bigger army. If you don't have a bigger army, I don't even think you need a cavalry on the flanks.
Yeah.
Also, if you fill the whole combat with, you don't need cavalry whatsoever. But I guess that's a lot later in the game.
Better safe than sorry. 2
Yeah,
units,
definitely.
sure.
Just have a little bit of cavalry sprinkled in there.
You know what? No, maybe making a cliffhanger for next time. I wonder why they didn't update the combat system as much, because I think Crusader Kings 2 has a fantastic combat system, and I was looking forward to see that in AO4.
I was actually thinking, because you bring up Crusader Kings, have you played March of the Eagles?
No.
I've played it, and they have a similar combat system to that. You have flanks and the center, and you have a reserve flank as well. You can put generals on each of them, and you can actually select different tactics for each flank. So you can actually have a lot of customization for warfare. my opinion is on why they didn't do it, because they didn't want to make the game a war game. That is this only my opinion,
Well,
because there's so much more to EU4 than it only warfare. Although many people seem to actually only do warfare.
No, to be honest, AO3 is a war game. It's not as terrible as HAO EU3, but AO4 has basically nothing apart from war that is a core mechanic. Everything you do is just making your country more powerful for the next war.
Yeah, that's true enough, but you have all those other stuff to do to prepare for the next war. Practically in some games you only have the war and that's it.
Yeah, but I mean it's not a war game just because you just have to fight all the time. I mean, if you want a game that has some sort of internal politics, which I sorely miss in AO4, I really would love to see court factions, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, E2 is just brilliant in that regard. You have political parties, you have population in the provinces that can be affected by events. That game is so much more away
yeah,
from
of
war.
course, Wiki is, in my opinion, it's just a economic simulator in the end, economic and social simulator, or even, let's say, economic, political and social simulator, because you have all of that.
Yeah, so AO4 is certainly more wargame-like than Wiki 2, for example. So
Yeah, definitely.
maybe it's war game, maybe it's not. I think it depends on your definition. But
yeah,
I think
it's semantics in the end. You can't really define it. I think it's
up to everyone's opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe we'll see an update for the combat system as well in one of the newer patches, add-ons, whatever.
Yeah, I really hope so. I really hope we can get something interesting.
Maybe
what I'm looking forward to the most is to finally get an update to the religion system. Please, Paradox, please, if you're looking at this or listening to this or just looking at the forums, I think I've wrote it in every wishlist post I have ever made. Please change the religion or make it more profound, make it deeper. Religious wars are a joke. There is no 30-year war in the game because of religions. Religion is just something that inconveniences you. It's just something that makes your country a little bit weaker if you want to change to Protestantism. That's all it does. There's nothing more to it. It's just a big pain in the ass. And I really want them to change that. Because I think there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, so knock on wood.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll hear.
Okay, I think that was it for today. Do you want to do a shout out or something? I guess we could link your mod as well in the chat for people if they want to actually try it out.
Yeah, we can do that. I think it's also on Steam. Yeah, that Steam should have updated it to the newest version. I can... Yeah, I'll fetch the link and we can show the other people.
Yeah, just give me the link to the workshop page and I'm gonna post it in the chat.
Yeah, will do. Yeah, so but anyway, had a great time here. Hope we had some interesting discussions for the other people that were joining us. And yeah, until next time.
Yeah.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. Okay, guys, that was it for today. I hope you liked it. I'm going to archive this broadcast. I'm going to slightly edit it, the parts where I had to be AFK for a while, and I'm going to edit the sound a little bit because I think you have a little bit of background noise. But yeah, that's to be expected on a live show. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I mean, we didn't really just stick to combat mechanics, but I guess in a live discussion format, it's a little bit hard to actually stick to your format. So yeah, I hope we didn't just stray too much. And yeah, it's gonna be on YouTube as well. You can get the link to my YouTube, you know, under the video somewhere. And yeah, that's it. Here's also the oh yeah, I'm going to post Gaga's mod in the chat as soon as he sends it to me, and I'm going to post it in the description of the YouTube video as well. So yeah, that's it for tonight. I'm rambling again, so yeah, bye. Have a great evening.